Hello everyone, my name is Dinesh Tripathi. Today I'll be talking about one of the very important product portfolio, that is Tanzu. Tanzu is a portfolio of products from VMware which aims to help application modernization journey for clients. This is one of the portfolio that is not very old, I will say. I think recently VMware celebrated the second anniversary of Tanzu. What I thought is, let me just give you a walkthrough of several products which are part of this portfolio so that it helps you to quickly start and learn those products which are important for you and start your journey. So today I'm going to talk about that. So this course is primarily for those who are maybe just starting to learn Tanzu, those who want to build Tanzu products and do the configuration, and also those who are going to do the management of Tanzu products. This is also important for those personas who are going to develop application, do the migration of application, as well as working on designing and implementing DevSecOps. So let's move on. A quick disclaimer. This is purely based on my understanding, what I'm going to tell you, right? If you feel what I'm telling is something not appropriate, leave a comment and I'm going to fix that. I have captured several screenshots from VMware website. That is what I have put it. And also, since it is an evolving portfolio, things might change as we go on. So as I said, the objective of this course is basically to just walk you through the different products within Tanzu portfolio, help you to understand some of the use cases where you can use one product versus other, or how you can use the combination of Tanzu products to achieve a specific requirement for the application modernization. And also, the important thing here is it solves the challenges of modernizing existing monolith application, as well as helping to accelerate the development and deployment of brand new modern application. So quick view on the agenda. We're going to talk about Tanzu portfolio. We'll be talking about the different Tanzu editions and which one fits where. Then we'll talk about TKG overview, which is one of the product within Tanzu portfolio known as Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, and how we can leverage the packages to install the software. Then we'll talk about Tanzu Mission Control Overview, which is TMC. And also then the several other Tanzu products like Tanzu Application Platform, Tanzu Application Catalog, Tanzu Build Service, and others. We're going to talk about it. We'll also talk about the reference architecture of Tanzu portfolio of products here. And also there are several open source projects in the Tanzu portfolio, which we'll talk about. There are different documents within Tanzu documentation for different products. I'll try to make it simple for you so that you can go through the documentation quickly. And then finally, we are going to talk about why Tanzu. So quick view, we are going to go through around, I think, hour and a half to talk about all this. So first thing first, what is Tanzu portfolio? And before I talk about products, it's important to understand that in the last few years, VMware have done several acquisitions, starting from Pivotal, Heptio, Bitnami, Webfront. The combination of the product capabilities that they have is what forming Tanzu portfolio. And obviously now VMware is keep adding more and more features, more and more products. But essentially, the Tanzu portfolio is a combination of products and capabilities provided by some of these vendors or the companies who are now part of VMware. Now, if you look at this slide talks about what are the different products within Tanzu portfolio. And I'll start quickly talking about this in the following slide as well. But just to give you a high-level view of this slide is the set of products that you are seeing here are going to work mostly together to achieve some of the application modernization requirements, right? You can certainly use these products standalone as well. And also you can use these products not just with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid cluster, but also with other Kubernetes cluster, right? And this is what I'm going to talk in the following slide. But there are around 14, 15 products which are a part of this portfolio. Each product have their own significance, their own usage in the application modernization journey. Now, the way these products are fitted, right? The way these products are fitted in the application lifecycle management, let us talk about this. So starting from a build side of the application, think of the application developer who are going to start building or developing and building or deploying the application, right? So from developer perspective, I will need some sort of framework which can generate a lot of scaffold code for me that I can tweak a bit and start deploying, doing the unit test of that code immediately. And that is where Tanzu Portfolio provide the Spring framework as a part of Tanzu Portfolio, which developers can start utilizing as soon as possible, right? The second one is there are other products part of the build story. For example, Tanzu Build Service. Tanzu Build Service is one of the product which helps to take the entire source code from the Git repo, from the local file system, and create the OCI compliant container image for you. It uses the technology called Cloud Native Build Pack, and it basically can be deployed on any CNCF confirmant Kubernetes cluster, and then it can help you to accelerate your build of application. You don't have to worry about writing a Docker file. You don't have to worry about the security and compliance of the Docker file. You can just utilize this and create your container image. Another one is Tanzu Application Catalog, which is now renamed to VMware Application Catalog with the broader vision, because Tanzu Application Catalog is part of Bitnami. Basically, this came from Bitnami acquisition that VMware have made. And the purpose of this service is to provide the certified container image, especially for runtimes, middlewares, databases, those kind of softwares, as well as the automation like Helm chart to deploy and manage the life cycle of that particular software component. With the renaming from Tanzu Application Catalog to VMware Application Catalog, now they're aiming to basically provide the VM images as well, not just Inco container image. And that is what we'll be talking about a bit. The next one is Tanzu Application Service, which is a Pivotal Cloud Foundry-based solution. And I'll not talk about this, but there are other products within this build story is Tanzu Application Platform, which is a new one. It's not listed here because this picture is a bit old. And Tanzu Application Platform actually helps both personas, whether they are application developer or application operators. From application developer perspective, it provides several tooling and plugins for the IDEs so that you can quickly start your application development and iterate or make the changes in that application. From operations perspective, it provides something known as supply chain, and supply chain got multiple tools, for example, for scanning the source code, scanning the container image, building it, signing the image, right? Storing the metadata, deploying it, all of that stitches the supply chain, and that I'll talk when I'll talk about tab. Now, moving to the application runtime, and we know that when we are building container image, the core platform where we run the containerized application is Kubernetes. And from VMware side, the flavor of Kubernetes is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid or TKG, right? And that is what you are seeing here. From Tanzu portfolio perspective, this is the one, but essentially you can bring other Kubernetes flavors here as well, like EKS, maybe AKS, GKE type of service can also be in the application runtime space. And obviously, all these are certified across different environments. It can be a VMware environment running in on-prem. It can be VMC type solution like VMC on AWS or Azure VMware solution. And we can also run this on a public cloud environment as well as on edge locations. Looking back this side where we have the manage aspect of the application as well as the platform, and there are different services provided here from VMware like Tanzu Observability, Tanzu Mission Control, Tanzu Service Mesh. And they have their own feature. For example, and a quick note, Tanzu Observability helps you to monitor and not just monitor. It's basically the observability service, right? Where you can do tracing, you can do event correlation, you can do metrics, the monitoring, all of those things you can do not just for Kubernetes cluster, but actually it is supporting starting from infrastructure till application. Tanzu Mission Control helps to monitor and manage different Kubernetes clusters. It can be TKG, it can be non-TKG, and it provides a single pane of glass. And it is very, very helpful for the operators because it provides several features like policy management, data protection, conformance check, all that we can do from single pane of glass. Tanzu Service Mesh, it's basically the VMware flavor of Service Mesh. It is based on Istio and it is a SaaS solution, which helps again to manage the service mesh running of services running across different Kubernetes clusters. We'll be talking about these products in much more detail as I go on. So hold on for some time. Now, let's look at Tanzu Edition. So Tanzu Edition, why it is important? We have seen several products here. For example, if I go back to this slide, you have seen several products here. These products, if we take these to the client, I think sometimes it may be confusing. And Tanzu Edition actually solves that. Tanzu Edition provide a bucketing or a packaging of those products and targeting to solve specific problem. So starting with Tanzu Basic Edition, this is the first one. Then we have Tanzu Standard Edition. Third one is Tanzu Advanced, and recently Tanzu Community Edition came in. So if you look from the first one, Tanzu Basic, the purpose of Tanzu Basic is to provide a Kubernetes environment in vSphere, whether it is inside or on top of vSphere. When I say inside, this is basically the result of Project Pacific, which VMware announced in VMworld 2019, I guess. And the productized version of that is vSphere with Tanzu, where you can run Kubernetes cluster or a Kubernetes environment inside vSphere. And we'll talk about that as I go on. But it provides a basic Kubernetes cluster targeted for those who are maybe just starting their application modernization journey. They want to see how things works. And I feel that Tanzu Basic works best for them. Tanzu Standard is Tanzu Basic plus additional feature. And Tanzu Basic plus additional feature meaning providing a set of packages or the tooling, for example, Prometheus, Grafana, and other tools, and also the capability to run this Kubernetes cluster across multi-cloud environment, hybrid multi-cloud environment. You can run on vSphere, you can run on public cloud environment. And as we move further, Tanzu Advanced. So Tanzu Advanced primarily targeted when you are going to accelerate your modern application development and you are going to do the CI/CD and so many other things for the modern apps. That is where Tanzu Advanced provides several products and solutions to manage those things easily. The last one is Tanzu Community Edition, and Tanzu Community Edition is an open source free version that is available today, where you can deploy Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, you can deploy several packages, not just on VMware environment and public cloud environment, but also you can deploy this on your own laptop. And I'm going to show you some demo in this area too. So let's look at a quick comparison of different Tanzu Edition. And I'm just going to click on this link. So you can actually go through this as well. This is a quick video that is provided by VMware And I found this is very, very helpful. So feel free to listen this offline as well. I'll put the link. But what this comparison is basically talking, if I go to this and click here, you see there are different parameters, and based on that, it is telling whether it is supported on those different editions or not. So support type, we know that the first three, basic, standard, and advanced, are commercial, and community edition is obviously community supported. Developer framework like Spring and others are part of Tanzu Advanced. Data service, curated app catalog, container build using Tanzu build service, curated app catalog using Tanzu application catalog, and data service using Tanzu data service. They all are bundled within Tanzu Advanced Edition. Container registry using Harbor, and Harbor is one of the powerful container registry used by several clients, is bundled within all. And I think this is one of the essential feature. If you are going to deploy the container image, you need container registry where you can store. Maybe you do not want to store the container registry on public registries like Docker Hub because of the security and other regions. So it's better to use the Harbor registry. Other features like service mesh, observability, you are seeing, so like service mesh is part of this. Observability monitoring, you are seeing part of all. And in Tanzu Advanced, it is plus, which means it provides additional capability. So observability and monitoring on Tanzu standard is using Prometheus Grafana, but when you move to Tanzu Advanced, you can utilize services like Tanzu Observability, right? So similarly, others, policy management, conformance, all of these through Tanzu Mission Control. Container networking using Entria. So Entria is supported on all the flavors. Load balancing using NSX Advanced Load Balancer. And obviously with Enterprise or Tanzu Advanced version, there are additional capabilities provided by Entria Enterprise. So similarly, there are others as well, right? And I'll put this link, you can go through, but this actually tells that what are the features which are bundled in these different flavors. And I think this is very, very helpful if you are going to decide which Tanzu flavor you are going to use. So this is very, very helpful. Moving back, now we talked about Tanzu Edition, and I'll put those links. So let's look at now TKG, which is VMware Opinionated Kubernetes Platform, Kubernetes service, which is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. And also I'm going to talk about packages. Packages are the way to basically wrap the software and provide the way to install them. And I'm going to talk about it. So Tanzu Kubernetes Grid have multiple flavors, TKGM and TKGS. TKGM, which is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid for multi-cloud. And this essentially provides you a Kubernetes cluster or a consistent experience of running Kubernetes cluster in your on-prem VMware environment or on public cloud like AWS and Azure. Whereas TKGS, this is a Tanzu Kubernetes Grid service. And sometimes I refer that as a Tanzu Kubernetes Grid using supervisor cluster. And it works on vSphere 7. And it provides several additional features, not just running Kubernetes cluster, but also help you to run vSphere pods or VM service that I'm going to quickly talk in the upcoming slide. But at a high level, there are two types of Kubernetes cluster are supported under two umbrellas, basically. Eventually, from end user perspective, let's say application developer, they will get Kubernetes cluster, but you can use the way TKG-M supports deploying cluster or the way TKG-S support. So let's talk a bit more about TKG-M. Tanzu Kubernetes Grid for multi-cloud is one of the service from VMware which help you to run Kubernetes cluster across hybrid multi-cloud environment. You can run on VMware environment, you can run on public cloud environment. And if I start from the bottom, you can see the support, that's what I was talking. One layer up, if you go, then what happens is in order to set up TKGM, the first component that we set up is known as management cluster. The first construct or the first element that we set is called as management cluster. Management cluster essentially is a Kubernetes cluster only, but it hosts the cluster API component, and cluster API, which is used to manage the life cycle of other Kubernetes clusters. And other Kubernetes cluster are known as Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, or sometimes we refer Tanzu Kubernetes workload cluster. They primarily host the application workload, right? There can be multiple workload cluster for one management cluster, right? And you also can have multiple management clusters depending on the scenario when you need. If you need the complete isolation between teams, you can actually go with Tanzu Kubernetes workload cluster as well. But due to some other requirement, if you need the full isolation, maybe you can separate the management cluster too. But most of the time, you can have separate Tanzu Kubernetes clusters or a workload cluster that can be assigned to different teams and they can start using. There are basically a set of shared services which will be utilized. For example, Harbor Registry, authentication, log forward, observability. There are a whole bunch of services which will be utilized across different Kubernetes clusters. And sometimes we recommend them, or I recommend them, to put them on a separate cluster. That will be another workload cluster, but you can designate that cluster for hosting shared services. And all of this, if we deploy, all of this actually refers as a Tanzu Kubernetes grid instance. So this is one instance, consists of several components, as you can see here. TKGM also provide packages, I was saying. So those packages are primarily there to deploy these shared services. For example, if you want to deploy Prometheus Grafana, you want to deploy Harbor Registry, you can utilize the package provided by VMware and deploy them. Now, this we can also integrate with a Tanzu Mission Control, and I would recommend doing that because integrating with Tanzu Mission Control helps you to get the visibility across your Kubernetes cluster and ease the life of operators. You can check more detail here in this document and you will find it. So let's look at TKGS, which is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid Service. This is the architecture of TKGS. And before I talk about the architecture, this actually works on vSphere 7.0 onwards, right? So this is something which I was talking earlier as well, not only there to provide a Kubernetes cluster, but actually change the complete vSphere architecture where you can start deploying the virtual machine in Kubernetes native way as well. And there is also a construct of vSphere pods, which you can run directly on ESXi hypervisor. So let's start. So what you can see in the bottom, from vSphere infrastructure perspective, you need to have vSphere 7.0 onwards. And networking, you can go with either vSphere networking or with NSXT. The only thing important to note is if you are going with vSphere networking, you will not have all the features. If you're going with NSXT networking, you will get all the features. For example, vSphere pods. You cannot deploy vSphere pod if you go with vSphere networking. So this is telling that, let's say we have two vSphere clusters, right? We can have one as well. You can have more than two as well. Each vSphere cluster is going to host a supervisor cluster. Unlike what you have seen in the management cluster, where within one vSphere cluster, you can have multiple management clusters. But here, you cannot have more than one supervisor cluster in a vSphere cluster. This is 1:1 relationship. When you log into the vCenter UI, you will get another option known as workload management. And that workload management help you to enable supervisor cluster. It doesn't take a lot of time. You just need to fill a simple form by providing some details like the cluster name, network detail, and you say enable. And it's going to take around, I think, 15-20 minutes to enable the supervisor cluster. And eventually what you get 3 virtual machines. They will host the supervisor cluster component. You cannot have one, you will have by default 3. Now, when supervisor cluster is enabled, what it gives you is the way to deploy VM using VM operator. It actually hosts the cluster API to orchestrate and manage the lifecycle of different Kubernetes cluster that I'll talk. And you will have supervisor control plane nodes, VM. Now, once supervisor cluster is set up, what you can do is you can create supervisor namespace. Remember, this is different from Kubernetes namespace. Supervisor namespace is or can be created on vCenter UI. So you can do right click and create supervisor namespace. But you can only do once the workload management is, once the supervisor cluster under workload management is enabled. Once you have supervisor namespace, then you can create Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. If I compare with TKGM, they are your workload cluster, and this is your management cluster. So then here you are creating a workload cluster, and these workload cluster will have obviously the master node and worker nodes that you are seeing, and then eventually Kubernetes pod will be created. These cluster can be assigned to the developers or a deployment team so that they can deploy the application. You can also see that in the same namespace, you can create Kubernetes cluster, but you can also deploy vSphere pods. You can also deploy the virtual machine using Kubernetes native construct. And same thing what you are seeing in the left-hand side as well. Again, vSphere pods are completely different than Kubernetes pods. vSphere pods runs on ESXi host directly. In order to run vSphere pod, you do not need Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, but you will need a supervisor cluster. Okay. So go through this link. This is VMware official link to know more about TKGS. Now let's talk about Tanzu package. So package is an OCI compliant bundle of software that create one or more KX resource. Think of this as a Helm chart. It's not exactly the replica, but think of this as a Helm chart. When you're trying to deploy some software, some package or the application, create Helm chart, create automation, or tells the way to deploy that, right? So package actually uses, or basically Carvel tool is being used to package a software and also helps to deploy the software on a Kubernetes cluster. Again, you can deploy package on any Kubernetes cluster, not necessarily just on Tanzu. And I have tried this deploying open source packages that is provided by Tanzu Community Edition, and that works perfectly. So what this screenshot is telling is basically the list of available package. I think this is not important, but the important thing here is once you create the package, since it is OCI compliant bundle, you can push that package to the container image registry. And while deploying, you can pull that, extract and deploy, and all that can be handled using Carvel tools. I have created a separate video for it, and I'm going to attach the link so that you can see it. Now, there are 2 types of packages broadly categorized as of today. One is core, another is user managed package. Core packages are those packages which will be installed at the time of installing Kubernetes cluster, or TKG, Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. They are going to be pre-installed. You don't have to install them. However, user managed packages are the one which we are going to install. And once you are deploying Tanzu standard, you will see that you will have 2 repositories added by default. One is Tanzu core, another is Tanzu standard. And the packages part of Tanzu core, as I said, are installed by default, but the packages which are part of Tanzu standard like Harbor, Prometheus Grafana, FluentBit, and others needs to be installed by us one by one. And it's very simple to install using Tanzu CLI. There is just one-liner command that you need to run and your package will be installed. There are a list of core packages which gets installed on TKG cluster, and there are also a list of user managed packages which you can install after TKG cluster is deployed are listed here, and I'm going to put the link for you so that you can look at them. So I just added this slide basically to let you know that I have created a separate video of deploying Tanzu Community Edition cluster on your personal laptop, so that you can just take a look at this link and you can do on your own. I'm going to put this on description too. And similarly, I have also done the demo of deploying packages, right? And it's a good demo that you can take a benefit of it. You can understand how to deploy Tanzu packages using this demo. Now let's look at one more important service or product from VMware is Tanzu Mission Control. As I said, Tanzu Mission Control helps you to provide a single pane of glass for managing different CNCF conformant Kubernetes cluster by applying the policy, different policies actually, security policy, access policy, network policy, all that. And it also helps you to manage the backup, conformance of cluster, and in fact, it also can provision the workload clusters on vSphere 7 and provision the cluster on AWS and Azure too. So this picture is essentially telling that in Tanzu Mission Control, you can do several of these, which is what I was talking: lifecycle management, identity access, security compliance, configuration, data protection. All of them are not available today. What I have seen is we can do the cluster lifecycle management, identity access, data protection, observability and diagnostic, service management, uh, and connectivity, some of these things that we can do. And for that, there is an integration. For example, the integration with Tanzu Observability is available as of today. The integration with Tanzu Service Mesh is available as of today. And I have not seen these two yet. Maybe they will be coming in future. If you look at the right-hand side, which is what you're telling that, you're seeing that there are different Kubernetes cluster, not TKG, but different flavors like AKS, EKS, OCP, Rancher, GKE, all that. You can attach these cluster to TMC. But if you see at the right-hand side, each provision, which means you can provision the TKG cluster on these infrastructure. That doesn't mean that you cannot attach TKG cluster on this. You can attach TKG cluster as well with TMC, but TKG cluster can be provisioned too. Now, what is the difference between attach and provision? When you attach, you do not have all the features and flexibility, but you do have most that you can apply using TMC. But when you provision, you can do everything. And also, when you provision, I think it makes a lot of sense provisioning these clusters via TMC, because you can not just provision, but you can manage the whole lifecycle from single pane of glass. You have basically better control, right? But I have been using this attach feature most of the time, and I do not see any challenge. This works perfectly. So you can attach the cluster. It's again just simple single click command. That once you have subscription of Tanzu Mission Control, you can just see that how simple it is to attach any Kubernetes cluster on TMC. This slide just telling a quick view of the resource and their hierarchy, that how it is managed. So at the top level, we'll have organization, but then clusters are grouped under cluster group. So cluster group is a logical grouping of clusters. For example, if you want to group a cluster based on maybe some business units, maybe based on the cluster type, or maybe based on the number of policy you want to apply on cluster group, right? So this is a logical isolation. Whereas workspace is a grouping of Kubernetes namespace. So if you want to create a workspace, or you want to create a group of namespace to apply specific policies, that is where you can create workspaces. And I think workspace is very good and important feature, because in the real time, this is going to happen that you are deploying maybe database in one namespace that require different kind of policies, but you're deploying web application or web app parts in another namespace that may require different type of policy. So this is just a quick console view, the screenshot that I took from VMware site, basically telling that how the cluster looks like, right? These clusters are some may be attached, some may be provisioned, and this tells the view of all the clusters that is either attached or provisioned. And also you can see the option here, attach cluster, create a cluster, and you can see more options here. This is a bit old screenshot in my view, because there is now more features, like one is catalog feature that got introduced. So catalog feature actually helps you to deploy Tanzu packages on a TKG cluster using TMC console. And I think that is very good feature that have been recently introduced. Now, based on the use cases, TMC is also classified into different versions, starting from essential, Tanzu Mission Control, essential, standard, advanced. There is one more that is announced called as TMC starter. So before I talk about these, I'll quickly talk about TMC starter. So TMC starter is a free version of Tanzu Mission Control, which is not yet available for our usage, but I believe that's going to come soon. And there is a page where you can do the registration to get it when it is available. But these are the three versions which are supported today. So Tanzu Mission Control Essential, Tanzu Mission Control Standard, and Advanced. So this is what I'm going to quickly talk about. So before I talk about the comparison, and I'll let you read, but the Essential is basically bundled primarily with VMC type services, right? Tanzu Mission Control Standard is bundled with Tanzu Standard Bundle. So when you are subscribing for Tanzu Standard Bundle, you will get Tanzu Mission Control Standard flavor. When you are subscribing for Tanzu Mission Control, when you're subscribing for Tanzu Advanced, you get Tanzu Mission Control Advanced. Also, Tanzu Mission Control Advanced can be subscribed separately, right? But you cannot subscribe separately. Whether it is Tanzu Essential or Tanzu Mission Control Essential or Tanzu Mission Control Standard. These are several features which are a part of TMC or Tanzu Mission Control. And you see that what is supported under Essential, what is supported under Standard, what is supported under Advanced. So Advanced basically supports everything. Standard support few less things, especially it doesn't support some of these policies. Just everything is supported. So like you see that image policy, networking, quota, some of these policies are not supported. Only what you see is security policies, which is strict and baseline, is supported. Whereas in Tanzu Mission Control, there are, Tanzu Mission Control Essential, there are more limitations. So you cannot do conformance, you cannot do data protection. So this is how they are categorized, right? In order to take the benefit of all the features of TMC, obviously, Tanzu Mission Control Advanced is going to help you. What we have talked so far, I wanted to cover Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, Tanzu Mission Control in a bit more detail. That's the reason I covered them separately. And I think they are obviously the key. It doesn't mean that the coming one not the key, but most of the enterprises are starting from there, right? You need Kubernetes cluster, you need a way to manage Kubernetes cluster, and then you start thinking about the application part. So now what I'm going to talk is overview of other Tanzu products. There are several, and that I'm going to talk. So other Tanzu products, as you can see, maybe I'm missing something as well. Just let me know if you see any, or I will obviously keep updating this as I keep finding more. Tanzu Build Service, VMware Application Catalog, Tanzu Service Mesh, Observability, Tanzu Application Platform, which is one of the key product that has been GA'd recently, and I'm exploring a lot on this. Application Transformer for Tanzu, Cloud Native Runtime for Tanzu, So application transformer for Tanzu helps you to basically do the migration of application, the monolith to microservices. And this is not yet G8 product. Cloud native runtime for Tanzu is a serverless platform which uses Knative. Then we have Tanzu data service and VMware Spring Runtime, which consists of several other products like Spring Cloud API Gateway, Spring Cloud Data Flow, or different open source Spring projects which are offered under this bundle. So let's talk one by one quickly. Tanzu build service, so which is referred as TBS, as I said, that helps to automate the container image creation from source code. Your source code is available on maybe some GitHub. It may be available on local system, right? You can supply that, and TBS, it's TBS responsibility to detect whether it is Java code, Python code, or what, and it's TBS responsibility to containerize it and give you the OCI compliant container image that eventually you can deploy on any Kubernetes cluster. Behind the scene, it uses the capabilities of build pack, right? And cloud native build pack is CNC, a project which is being used behind this. So build pack actually powers Tanzu build service to do all that. Now, sometimes you may be confused when you are reading is whether Tanzu build service replaces CI. In my view, no, it actually complements. So when you are using a CI tools like Jenkins or others, you can integrate with Tanzu build service, and Tanzu build service is going to take care of creating the container image. You can do rest of the part there, right? And as you can see here, this is just talking about the flow from developer perspective, that you have a source code, which is basically being supplied to Tanzu build service. It is utilizing build pack, and there is also concept of OS stack. But let's not confuse. Let's see that we have a build pack, and behind the scene stacks are being used. And then it create a OCI compliant container image, which you can push to any registry. And that can be utilized in any CD or a continuous delivery pipeline, right? And that you can deploy on different Kubernetes clusters. This is very, very powerful product. And I have tried this several times. It really works very well. And I would recommend you to try as well. Let's look at the second one, which is VMware Application Catalog, earlier known as Tanzu Application Catalog. So basically, this is a SaaS service which came after the acquisition of Bitnami, which provides the curated set of a catalog for backing services, runtimes, right? Maybe like databases. All of those are available there. And this you can basically go and create your own image, right? By giving the information like which base image you want, which software you want, and then behind the scene, VMware is going to create the container image for you, and not just creating the image. I'm sure that they will be doing a lot of scan, test, all of that, and eventually, once the image is available, you can see all the result as well on that Tanzu Application Catalog UI, or now VMware Application Catalog UI. So it started with providing container image, but after the renaming from tag, which is Tanzu Application Catalog, to VMware Application Catalog, now they're going to provide a VM-based images as well. So VM-based image, and then you have some software on top of that you want, all that will be provided too, right? So as you can see here, it's not just the image, it's basically the secured, customized based on your need, and that actually helps you to accelerate the application deployment. Next one is Tanzu Service Mesh. It is really very, very big topic. I am just putting in one slide, but this is a very big topic. So TSM, or Tanzu Service Mesh, is built on VMware NSX. And this is a really enterprise class service mesh solution that provides consistent control and security of microservices running across different Kubernetes platform. They also, I think, support cloud-based services as well, but I have primarily explored around microservices running on Kubernetes platform, maybe TKG, maybe EKS, AKS type service. So what they do, basically, there's a concept of global control plane and local control plane. So global control plane is centrally hosted, provided you as a SaaS solution, whereas local control plane will run on every Kubernetes cluster. You will get to see all the Istio component running on your cluster. And then the powerful feature here provided by Tanzu Service Mesh is to combine or to basically serve the application running across different Kubernetes cluster by using the concept of global namespaces. So global namespace helps you to map the services, microservices running across different cluster, and that way it combines and basically this application request that is coming up, if it need response from several clusters, global namespace helps you to provide that. And in my view, that's very powerful feature. There are other features as well, like SLO, service level objective. So think of a scenario that you have front-ending microservice, which you do not want to go down anytime, which means you have a really critical SLO requirement for that. And you can define that you want how many nines or are those things that you want. You can specify that SLO, and accordingly, the action can be taken by Tanzu Service Mesh. If you want to maybe scale up, scale down, it can be taken by Tanzu Service Mesh. So this is very powerful. And there are many more features that maybe I'll cover separately, but just a quick view about Tanzu Service Mesh. Tanzu Observability is again one of the SaaS solutions from VMware, and this came from Webfront acquisition, right? So this was earlier known as Webfront as well, but now it is Tanzu Observability, and that provide features like metrics, events, tracing, those kind of features for the application, and also wherever applicable for Kubernetes platform running across different environments. So it's not just for Kubernetes cluster monitoring or observability. This actually is a very mature product, which is, I think, which got around maybe 200 plus integration of different middleware, databases, different cloud services, Kubernetes cluster, application, and whatnot, right? You can do everything there. One other important feature that is there in TO is if you have made your existing investment on maybe some monitoring tools, right? But you want to have enterprise-wide monitoring capability that provide a single pane of glass, you can scrap those metrics and put it here by integrating those tools with the Tanzu Observability. So that is very powerful feature. Tanzu Observability from Kubernetes perspective, or especially from TKG, it comes with several dashboards. It comes with several out-of-the-box metrics. All that you see here, they are available by default, right? You need to just attach your cluster or onboard your cluster on TO, and it's very simple method. If you look at the Tanzu Observability document, you'll find there are hardly 2-3 commands that you have to run to onboard that cluster, and TO will start monitoring that, right? You can implement features like integrating with Slack for notification or integrating with other incident management tools to manage the life cycle of incidents. So this is very powerful product. Now let's look at Tanzu Application Platform, and this is one of the product that was GA'd very recently. This is very powerful product. And what it does is it basically helps developers as well as operators to accelerate what they are doing. For example, developer, what they will be doing. Developer are going to basically develop the application, write the business logic, make the changes, do some debugging. That is what the part of developer. Whereas operators or application deployment or operations team, they are going to quickly build the image, maybe scanning source code, scanning the image, maybe putting signatures, and eventually deploying it, right? All of these functionalities that you are seeing here are bundled in the tab by using different components or subproducts within tab, which you see are listed here. The TAP is a very, very broad topic, but I will just like to give you a quick view here, right? How it works. TAP uses the concept of inner loop and outer loop. So inner loop is the work that is performed by a developer, which they do on their own system. Outer loop is something that is run by the application ops team, which is happening on Kubernetes cluster, right? And this is referred as a choreography provided in form of supply chain, right? So supply chain meaning you are getting a workflow which helps you to integrate all these flows together so that from developer perspective, once I commit the code and that's going to be deployed, everything can be carried out in a workflow. There are different type of supply chain depending on the client's requirement that can be created. Right now, I see TAP provides three. One is basic, another is for testing, another one is for testing and scanning. Basic one where you just use Tanzu build service for building the container image and deploying it. If you go for testing, then you have another component comes in place for testing the application, and there they use Tecton. And that is swappable, right? So if you have your other tools, you can bring it, but by default, you get Tecton. Testing and scanning provide the scanning capabilities as well. And for scanning, they use Gripe. That is a tool for scanning your source code as well as scanning the container image. For signature, there is a tool called Cosign, and Cosign is being used. And there is also customization, or basically you can say the webhook provided for validating those signatures, right? Once you sign the image, and once we are pulling the image as part of Kubernetes, as a part of deploying that on Kubernetes cluster, it needs to be validated, and that is where webhooks are provided. And then eventually you deploy. So you can deploy on a serverless platform like Cloud Native Runtime. It's very powerful, that can run on any Kubernetes cluster. Basically, that is the aim. Right now, since this is the very first version, that is G8, before that there was 4 beta, and I have tried all the betas. I have tried 1.0. Most of the time I did on EKS cluster, but you can run on supported Kubernetes cluster that is in their documentation. So next one, let's look at application transformer for Tanzu. This is not yet G8, but the important thing for you to understand, this is one more powerful product from VMware that is going to help those clients who are going to modernize their monolith application. What it means by modernization, and honestly, there are several meanings, several ways to modernize, but I'm just talking one specific thing, that you are going to containerize the monolith app, and then you are going to run on Kubernetes platform. That is where application transformer for Tanzu or VMware Tanzu helps you, right? So it helps to containerize the monolith app. It runs on VMware environment. This tool specifically runs on VMware environment today because we have OVA file, and I do not know, maybe once it is G8, things will change. It actually discovers the application and its component based on the signature, and application transformer comes with several signatures, like you see here, the component signature. And there is a way to write your own signature and put in, right? I tried deploying this on a VMware environment, and I tried connecting a vCenter, discovering some application, tried to containerize them. This seems very, very powerful to me, right? And this is going to help those clients who are starting their app modernization journey. They want to containerize the application with very, very minimal effort. Then this is the tool, right? Still, it is in preview. So once I get to know more detail, once it is G8, I'll let you know. Cloud Native Runtime for Tanzu, which is a serverless platform from VMware, it uses the capabilities of Knative, and it is a serverless offering, obviously by Tanzu, as I said, but this can be deployed on different Kubernetes cluster, right? This supports scale to zero, scale from zero like capabilities, and obviously, since this is a serverless, event-triggered workloads are very, very important. I tried this running on my own Minikube cluster, and it really works very well. You can try this out, and there is a good documentation available on VMware site, so you can just go through. I'll put the link. Tanzu Data Service is a portfolio which provides the data capabilities for the clients. And I have seen that there are different type of databases available. We have relational database, we have in-memory database, we have database like RabbitMQ, right, for fulfilling different kind of functionalities. And as far as I have investigated through the videos and other documents, it supports on VM, it also supports on containers, right? You can run like Tanzu SQL. Under Tanzu SQL, we have Postgres, we have MySQL that you can run on Kubernetes cluster too, but it supports on VM. And in some videos, I have seen it really provide a very powerful GUI, which can be utilized to provision some of these data services from the UI. And I'll put some video link here as well in the description so that you can go through. And I have not personally tried this on my lab, but this is something you can try out if you are primarily from the database team or you're trying to learn more about how the modern way of consuming databases. I think this is something you should try. So the last one here is VMware Spring Runtime, and VMware Spring Runtime is a bundle of these different components that you are seeing here. Under Spring Runtime, Spring Cloud API Gateway, which provides the API Gateway functionality. Then the data flow, Spring Cloud data flow. There are several Spring projects which are bundled in this Spring Runtime, and that will be supported by VMware. And there is also TC server and distribution of OpenJDK bundled here. So this is primarily targeted, more from the application standpoint. For example, several Spring projects that you can utilize if you're a developer. If you have some problems, I believe you're going to get a support for this. So go through this. I have put it the link and go through this and understand more about Spring Runtime. So we talked about different Tanzu products, overview of their overview of the different Tanzu products. And in this section, I'm going to quickly walk you through the reference architecture that VMware have put it for Tanzu. So in this particular reference architecture link that I have put it, you will see the reference architecture for deploying this on a VMware environment or on a public cloud environment. But this is one of the pictures that I took from there. And this is primarily telling running this on a VMware, but I think that's not important. The important thing here is how different products and services are combined together to provide a solution for the client. And this is what is depicted in this picture. So if you see here, the way it is being deployed, so we got a management cluster running on the infrastructure, let's say supported infrastructure. Here in this case, let's say VMware, vSphere, right? What the management cluster is hosting is obviously this is a Kubernetes cluster, but this host cluster API and authentication component, networking component. Now, once the cluster is deployed, then from here, you create workload clusters. One workload cluster for hosting shared service. As I was saying, these shared services are primarily container registry, authentication service, and then obviously you have several others like monitoring, logging, backup, all that. And also you have more workload cluster to host the application workload. And you can see, again, similar set of components, those are running here, they will also run here. And this will form Tanzu Kubernetes Grid instance. So we have a TKG instance. Now, the integration of these clusters is with Tanzu Mission Control, right? And that is what you see here. So there is a way to onboard the cluster, but once clusters are onboarded, then you can achieve several features like applying policy, managing conformance, doing data protection from Tanzu Mission Control. Other side, you see Tanzu Observability. So you onboard these clusters, agents are going to get installed, and there is outbound connectivity requirement, even for TMC, TSM, TO. And then all the metrics, etc., will be fed into Tanzu Observability, and you can see all of them in the dashboard. For Velero, you need object store for backup, and object store can be on the cloud environment, or in fact, you can run on a VMware environment too by using products or projects like Mina.io. And here what you can see, we can have non-TKG clusters as well, because TMC just not support TKG, TO just not support TKG. They support pretty much all the CNCF confirmed Kubernetes clusters. So try them out. So this is telling the reference architecture by utilizing some of the component. Here you may use Tanzu Service Mesh as well. You may bring other products too, and that is what I'm hoping to see in the updated reference architecture that we'll see in the VMware sites. Go through this link as well, and this link is going to show you the reference architecture on public cloud environment too. Now let's look at what are the open source projects bundled in the Tanzu portfolio, and there are multiple. I have tried to list them few here. So this is a cluster API, which is basically bundled in Tanzu. Kubernetes Grid. This is one of the core components. We have build packs. We have Octant for dashboarding. We have Entria. We have Pinifate for authentication, basically, primarily. And then we have Carvel tools, which is yet another important open source tool, helps you to create packages. We have Knative that powers cloud native runtime. Then we got Harbor Registry, we got Contour for ingress, we got Velero for data protection, and we got Octane and Sonoboy here, right? So this list may not be complete, but what I want to let you know is that there are several open source projects which are being used in the Tanzu portfolio. And that is basically powering the Tanzu portfolio to accelerate and bring all the new features quickly that will help or that will be needed by clients. Now, one other thing that I have facing some challenges is understanding the Tanzu documentation, because there are several products and sometimes it's easy to get confused. So this is the main landing page for VMware Tanzu documentation, which is vmware.com, vmware-tanzu index.html. Once you reach there, the way those product documentation has been broadly categorized, they have been categorized under this. So Tanzu for operators, Tanzu for developers, Tanzu data service, and Tanzu edition. So let me quickly click on this link. And what you see here is Tanzu for operators, primarily the bundle of those products and services which are focused on the operator's persona, right? For example, Tanzu Mission Control, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, obviously, then Tanzu Observability, Service Mesh, and others. If you look at developers, these products are bundled, which are focused from developer perspective, right? Like Tanzu Build Service, Build Pack, Application Catalog, and others. Then we have Tanzu Data Service, and then the Tanzu Edition. So you may be thinking, what are these operators and developers? Because I was talking about Tanzu Basic, Tanzu Advanced, Standard, and then the Community Edition. So I think these are also the different way of bundling those products, and especially I think based on maybe the client requirement, this bundle can be very, very helpful. So in my view, this is actually a good way of bundling, and depending on the requirement, the bundle can be taken by the client. So that's what it is. Moving to the next slide. So we have heard all about Tanzu. We have heard a lot of good things that Tanzu does. And now I think that this is now very, very simple for you to finalize that why Tanzu. This is again, I took from VMware website, and I think you must also agree now with this, that by bringing the Tanzu portfolio capability, everything that is listed here is fulfilled so well, right? In my view, that's the complete portfolio for helping the clients who are in their application modernization journey, who are even starting, or who maybe they have started, but they are in bit advanced stage, they want other help. I think this portfolio is going to help client or meet the client where they are and then power their application modernization journey. So take a look at these points, and I'm sure that you will agree too. This is the last slide. I just put it this for you to basically go through some of these links, and you will find a lot of good learning material. Kubernetes learning, if you are a beginner for Kubernetes, go ahead and look at whole bunch of good content available in cube.academy. Tanzu learning, modernapps.ninja site, which I found very, very helpful. Go ahead and take a look at it. There are a whole bunch of hands-on lab, and I have put it the direct link here. Go through it, and you will see very, very good HOLs for Tanzu developers, Tanzu operators, TKG. There are some simulated labs for TSM and Tanzu mission control. Go through it. And this is official VMware Tanzu documentation. I have also put it my blog link. So I write blogs on modern apps learning here, mappslearning.com. Go through, and you will see a lot of good blogs for you to help. So that's all for this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.